Okay, so in this video, we're going to be introducing the Unity UI and how to get started working with game objects, skyboxes, animations, and materials. Before we get started, I just want to make very clear that you are going to need a 3-button mouse to work with Unity. If you're stubborn and you really don't want to use a 3-button mouse, your hands are going to suffer and your brain is going to suffer trying to use any kind of trackpad while working in 3D space. So just save yourself the suffering and work with a 3-button mouse. Okay, so let's jump back into Unity and we'll begin working with the interface. All right, so here we are in the scene view. I'm able to navigate around this space using my 3-button mouse by using my scroll wheel to move back and forth. I can use my right button mouse to orbit around my position, and I can use my left button mouse to select different game objects in my scene. I can click down on my scroll wheel, so clicking on it, and I can use this to pan around my scene. So that's how we navigate in this space, a combination of scrolling, panning, orbiting, and selecting game objects in our scene. We can also select different game objects through the scene hierarchy menu. So I can see I have a particle system here, I have a directional light here, my main camera, which when selected will also show me the perspective that that camera has. And then inside of my camera are some children game objects, meaning you may not see them because there's this little drop down arrow next to the menu, but if you open that, you'll see that there's a game object called window, and inside of that game object is an object called wall and an object called frame. And these are two 3D models that are in this project. So I want to begin working with these 3D models. I can change these in a variety of ways. And the ways that I can work with them are these tools that you will find directly above your scene hierarchy menu. So we have something called a grab tool. This allows us to grab and move around our camera inside of our scene as a navigation tool. We have a translate tool, and when we select the translate tool, we'll see we have this icon that appears with our game object that is selected, which in this case is the frame, with these 3 arrows. And these arrows allow us to drag that game object on the X, Y, and Z axis, so we can move them forward and back, side to side, and up and down in space. If we open the inspector in the right column of our menu, we'll see that we can also change the position of this game object here. So anytime I select a different game object in this menu, I'll get different, they're called components, that are specific to each one of these game objects. So if I select this frame, I'll notice I can manually change where it's located in space on the X, Y, and Z axis. So I can move this here. I can also drag these values if I want to have a more visual, subtle adjustment. I can also rotate on the X axis, on the Y axis, and on the Z axis. And I can scale this object as well. So I can change its aspect ratio in different ways, or I can make it thicker or narrower. I'm gonna go ahead and hit Control Z to undo some of those changes that I made. Up here I have tools to also use these within the scene view. So if I select rotate, it'll give me this orb here where I can rotate this object on the X, Y, and Z axis, and you'll see it correlates to changes that then occur in the transform component of my inspector frame. And the scale object, so I can scale on the X, Y, or Z axis here. I can also click the center of this navigator tool and it will scale the entire object proportionally. And I can select, for example, multiple objects at once. So I can select both the wall and the frame by holding down Shift and selecting each of those objects inside of my scene hierarchy, and then I can scale them both together, for example. Now, what's interesting is because these game objects are children game objects of my main camera, it means that these game objects will inherit whatever attributes are applied to the camera. So if I take my main camera and I begin rotating it, you'll see that it also rotates all of the game objects that are children of the camera. If I come to the game view, right now my computer is set up with a free aspect ratio for this camera view. And what I might want to do is change this to be the exact aspect ratio that my project is ultimately going to be displayed at in the browser. And I can see what that ratio is going to be by coming to Project Settings, Resolution and Presentation. And I can see right now, my default canvas is set up to be 960 by 600. So I might change this to a fixed resolution of 960 by 600, and I'm going to name this as canvas. And hit OK, select that, and so now this frame is going to be the same as it's going to appear in the browser. So now in this game view at the top, we'll see we have these three different buttons: a play button, a pause button, and a step button. And when we want to run the simulation, we want the game mechanics, the physics, the different animations, everything to go ahead and do their thing, we need to hit this play button. And when we hit play, we'll see different effects are starting to happen in the game based on the project files that we have. So we have this particle system that's animating. We can also see that the way that the light is hitting these 3D models that are attached to the camera is slowly changing over time. And if we switch while our game is running in play, back to the scene view, we can start to understand how that's happening, which is that it looks as though our main camera is animating by rotating around in a circle, and our particle system is animating, sending these little particles in one direction, sort of this way in our ambiguous space in the scene. But one thing to note as I'm working with these elements while the game is running is that no changes I make to my scene will be saved while I'm in play mode. So when I hit play again, it's going to snap everything back to how it was before I hit play. So we have these two modes that we are in. We're in an editing mode, and then we're in a play mode where we're testing how the game interprets those changes that we've been making.